Hello, everybody. My name is Donald Butson, and for my author spotlight, I chose the author and illustrator E.B. White. You may not know a whole lot about E.B. White, but you definitely do know a couple of his works, including Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little. Those are obviously two of his most prominent works in children's literature, but he also contributed to literature in many other ways besides just writing children's books. Um, so he was born in 1899 in New York. Um, he always wanted to write. Um, he always wanted to be an illustrator, but he started off writing as a political news writer for the New Yorker. Um, so he became a full-time writer for the New Yorker in 1927, shortly after he graduated college, and he quickly rose up the ranks of at the New Yorker and became one of their most prominent, one of their most influential and important writers in the magazine. And this was a time when the New Yorker was one of the biggest magazines out there. So he wrote pieces on just so many different topics and touched so many different people with his writings. And this was before he even started writing children's books. Um, so after many years at the New Yorker, where he actually met his wife, who was his first editor. So he didn't start dating her and married her until after he after he stopped working at the New Yorker. Um, but after he stopped working at the New Yorker, he decided to write children's books, and his two most famous ones, like I said earlier, are Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little. He thought of the idea for Stuart Little, he said, when he was dreaming, and he dreamt that he was in a race car, and as he was racing, he looked next to him, and there was a mouse racing in a race car right next to him. So that gave him the idea for Stuart Little, and the idea for Charlotte's Web came when he worked on a farm, and he started to become empathetic with the pigs and how they always got shipped off to the butcher and got killed. So he wanted to write a story about that, but also got the influence from looking at a spider taking care of its babies up in a web to make the protagonist a spider and kind of give the spider the wisdom. So I'm going to read a quick excerpt from Charlotte's Web, and this is the scene in Charlotte's Web when Wilbur first meets Charlotte. So it says, "At last Wilbur saw the creature that had spoken to him in such a kindly way. Stretched across the upper part of the doorway with a big spider web, and hanging from the top of the web, head down, was a large gray spider. She was about the size of a gumdrop. She had 8 legs and was waving one of them at Wilbur in a friendly greeting. 'See me now?' she asked. 'Oh, yes, indeed,' said Wilbur. 'Yes, indeed. How are you? Good morning. Salutations. Very pleased to meet you. What is your name, please? May I have your name?' 'My name,' said the spider, 'is Charlotte.' 'Charlotte what?' asked Wilbur eagerly. 'Charlotte A. Kavitica. But you can just call me Charlotte.' 'I think you're beautiful,' said Wilbur. 'Well, I am pretty,' replied Charlotte. 'There's no denying that. Almost all spiders are rather nice looking, and not as flashy as some, but I do wish I could see you, Wilbur, as clearly as you could see me.' 'Why can't you?' asked the pig. 'I'm right here.' 'Yes, but I'm near-sighted,' replied Charlotte. 'I've always been dreadfully near-sighted. It's good in some ways, not so good in others. Watch me wrap up this fly.' So this is just an example of Charlotte's Web and what was going through E.B. White's mind when he was writing it. I think the theme in Charlotte's Web as well as in Stuart Little is that no matter who you are, no matter what people think of you, no matter what your destiny is, you can do amazing things and you can conquer things in the world that no one thought that you'd be able to do. Just like in Charlotte's Web, Wilbur conquers the fact that he was going to go to Butcher and get killed. So in Stuart Little, nobody thinks anything of this little mouse, but it turns out that this mice goes on an amazing adventure and is the hero of the story. So while teaching students about different animals and the feelings that people can have, I think the main theme of his stories are to be able to do more than you ever thought possible you could do. So the activity that I would have my students do for this author would be to find some of E.B. White's works that weren't children's stories. So he wrote many different articles and influential stories and books about writing in general and just about the world. So my activity would be to have students find one thing that E.B. White did, one story that he wrote, and do a book report on it and help discover what E.B. White's life was like and how his life outside of children's literature influenced him to write these books that we all know and love. So I would have students write a very detailed book report about the work that they read, and then I would like them to tie it in with how that work can be influenced by his children's literature and how his children's literature was influenced by that work.